Well, for more on this breaking news, we're joined by CTV's Glen McGregor, who is at the United Nations. Glen, this is quite the turn of events. Yesterday, you were talking about Chrystia Freeland giving basically the biggest speech of her career, and now it's the biggest deal of her career, or that's taking top spot. So what exactly are you hearing?
Well, obviously, that's the priority. The NAFTA negotiations more important than her speech to the UN General Assembly, which is pretty much almost shut down now because we're late in the week. All the major leaders spoke earlier in the week, and so Canada's slot was not a great one. So not much of a loss there, and it really is unclear who will deliver that speech on Monday or if it'll be delivered at all. Obviously, government's priority is getting a NAFTA deal before this U.S.-imposed deadline, which is tomorrow evening. But of course, Congress doesn't sit on the weekend, so we were expecting the U.S. and the Mexicans to release a full text of their agreement last night without Canada signing on to it. That has been delayed. Also, looks like the Mexicans and the Americans are willing to at least wait until the end of the weekend and see if there's any chance that Canada could sign on again. But one of the complications is the Quebec election next week. That is something that is factoring into this in a big way, especially if Canada's signing on to this deal requires concessions affecting Quebec's dairy industry. That would be a political bombshell right before people in Quebec go to vote, and it's very likely the Canadian side would like to wait until after that happens, but it's quite possible that just isn't in the cards, and that there could be maybe a deal announced tomorrow, maybe Monday, maybe Tuesday, we don't know. The fact that Freeland is back in Canada, you could read that a couple of ways. If Canada was to have achieved an agreement, maybe they would want to announce it from Ottawa. Maybe they'd want to be in Washington. We don't know. So everything's really in flux right now, but it's clear that, Angie, that things are coming right down to the wire into the final hours heading up to tomorrow night.
Oh, my goodness. It's like trying to follow the bouncing ball. We have no idea which way it's going to go now. Recently, this week, Trudeau spoke with the president-elect of Mexico talking about salvaging this three-country agreement. What more do we know about that conversation?
Yes, the president-elect Obrador is saying that he is going to honor any agreement that was made by his predecessor, Enrique Peña Nieto. So that would include the deal with the Americans. So that would suggest that the Mexicans are willing to extend the deadline further so that the text doesn't get signed before the new president takes over. It would be sometime after, but he would respect the deal made previously, and that would give Canada a bit more time to keep negotiating, to keep this thing going, the talks going into next week, maybe Tuesday, maybe Wednesday. We just don't know. We've heard so many rumors, Angie, about this over the past few months, that a deal was imminent so many times, and then it never seems to happen. So we have to be a little bit cautious here about what this actually means. This deadline really doesn't affect Canada directly because Congress is required to approve a three-way deal, and the fact that the Mexicans and the U.S. are going to submit a two-way deal, it's unclear if Congress would approve that. We've heard conflicting signs from congressmen, from senators and representatives in the House about whether they would do that. That was sort of Canada's stopgap position, that Congress would save them if they hadn't signed on before this deadline. We still don't know if that's the case. Again, just tremendously in flux, so many balls in the air right now, and not a lot of clarity coming from Minister Freeland's office yet about exactly what's happening in the next 12, 18, 24 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll keep watching. And Glenn, I certainly appreciate you trying to sort of divulge, go through all those bouncing balls and juggle it for us, if you will. Glen McGregor reporting to us from the United Nations. Thank you, Glenn.
Thanks.